somewhere around the 24th hour without food, the last usable sugar in your liver runs out, and your body reaches for a survival program so old it predates the human species itself. Over the next 2 days, it will begin to take itself apart, piece by piece, and burn the pieces to stay alive. It will drain its fat reserves, quietly borrow from its own muscle, flood your blood with a fuel your modern life almost never produces, and deep inside your cells, it will switch on a process whose name translates literally as self-eating. None of that is damage in the way it sounds. Almost all of it is precise control, and most of it has been running, unnoticed, your entire life. So what actually happens, hour by hour, when you stop eating? Does the body truly begin to consume itself? And is that a repair or a threat? When does the famous process called autophagy really switch on? And how much of what you have read about it online is real? And why is the single most dangerous moment of a long fast not the hunger at all, but the meal that finally ends it? To answer honestly, we have to follow the body downward, one system at a time, beginning with the sugar in your blood. For the first few hours after a meal, nothing dramatic happens. Your blood sugar is stocked, insulin is high, and your cells burn glucose the way they always do. But your body keeps only a small reserve of ready sugar, stored as a starch called glycogen, and that reserve is smaller than most people imagine. Your liver holds only about 100 grams of it. Your muscles hold 4 to 5 times more, and here is the first surprise of the fast. The glycogen packed inside your muscles is trapped there. Muscle lacks the enzyme needed to release free sugar back into the blood, so that huge store can fuel the muscle itself and nothing else. When your blood sugar begins to dip, only the liver can defend it. Within roughly 12 hours, the liver is spending its glycogen quickly, and somewhere between 18 and 24 hours, that pantry is essentially bare. Your blood sugar now has to come from somewhere new, because one organ in particular cannot be allowed to go dark. That organ is the brain. It burns close to 1/5 of your entire energy budget, and it never stops spending it. Every second, awake or asleep, the brain demands a steady trickle of fuel, and a serious shortfall would surface as confusion long before it ever became dangerous. It also follows a strict rule. It cannot run on fat directly because raw fatty acids cannot cross the barrier that guards it. So the body strikes a bargain. As insulin falls and its opposite signal, glucagon, rises, fat cells start releasing their stored fat into the bloodstream. The liver intercepts that fat and does 2 clever things with it. First, through a process called gluconeogenesis, it builds brand new glucose out of the glycerol backbone of fat and out of amino acids pulled from protein. Second, it converts the rest of the incoming fat into small, water-soluble fuel molecules called ketone bodies. Ketones are the workaround for the brain. Where whole fat cannot pass, ketones slip across easily and feed brain cells directly. By the second day, your bloodstream is running on a fuel mix that a well-fed modern body practically never sees. You might even be able to smell the shift. One of those ketones, acetone, is light enough to drift out on the breath, which is why a deep fast can leave a faint, sweetish, almost fruity note in the air. Just how far this goes was mapped in the 1960s by a physician named George Cahill, in experiments you could not get approved today. He had volunteers fast for weeks and measured precisely what their bodies were burning. The findings reshaped the field. Ketone production cuts the brain's glucose demand from around 80 grams a day down to roughly 30. After 3 days of fasting, the brain is already drawing about 1/3 of its energy from ketones. After 4 days, that share climbs toward 3/4. The organ that looked most fragile, most hopelessly addicted to sugar, turns out to be quietly, remarkably flexible. It is being fed, second-hand, by the fat on your own body. That single adaptation is the reason a human being can survive weeks without food, rather than collapsing in a matter of days. But that quiet borrowing from protein is a danger the body is fully aware of. If a fast simply melted muscle to manufacture glucose, you would grow too weak to hunt or flee long before you actually starved, and evolution does not tolerate that. The body would far rather spend fat, which it stores in near limitless amounts compared with the mere days of usable protein it can afford to give up. So a second adaptation switches on. Growth hormone, which most people file away as a chemical of childhood, surges during a fast, and one of its main jobs here is to shield muscle by suppressing protein breakdown. Track it across several days, and the amount of nitrogen the body loses actually falls. Hard evidence that it is learning to spare its own tissue as the fast deepens. At the very same time, deep inside your cells, a master growth switch called mTOR goes quiet. mTOR is the sensor that shouts build and grow whenever food is abundant. When nutrients disappear and insulin drops, mTOR signaling falls by roughly half, and powering it down releases a brake it had been holding. The brake it releases is autophagy. Autophagy is a housekeeping process your cells have always run, long before anyone had a word for it. That word arrived in 1963, coined by a Belgian scientist, Christian de Duve, from the Greek for self and for eating. It describes a cell parceling up its own worn-out parts, the damaged proteins, the broken power plants, the tangled molecular debris, and hauling them to an internal furnace called the lysosome to be dismantled and recycled into fresh, raw material. For decades, the idea sat quietly, a footnote in cell biology. Then, in the early 1990s, a Japanese researcher named Yoshinori Osumi began watching it happen inside ordinary baker's yeast. He disabled the yeast's tiny internal stomach so that the swallowed debris would pile up where a microscope could catch it, and then he tracked down the genes that drive the entire mechanism. In 2016, that work earned him the Nobel Prize. Fasting turns this recycling up because a hungry cell, suddenly short of building blocks, starts breaking down its own faulty parts to keep going. Clearing away those damaged proteins is also why autophagy is tied, in research, to holding off several diseases of aging. When the cleanup slows down, the debris it once removed can accumulate, and failing autophagy has been linked to conditions ranging from neurodegeneration to cancer. Here the story needs an honest correction, because this is exactly where the internet gets loud and confident. You have almost certainly seen a clean graphic claiming autophagy switches on at 16 hours, peaks at 24, and maxes out at 72. Those numbers are seductive, and they are mostly borrowed from mice and other animals. Autophagy is brutally difficult to measure inside a living human being, so almost none of those exact hour marks have ever been confirmed in people. The honest picture is blurrier and more interesting. Autophagy clearly rises during fasting. That much is solid, but its timing very likely differs from organ to organ, from a young body to an old one, and from a metabolically healthy person to a struggling one. Whether a 5-day fast produces dramatically more of it than a 2-day fast is entirely plausible, and, so far, unproven. The mechanism is genuine. The confident, colour-coded clock sold online mostly is not, which brings us to the strangest danger of the whole story, and to a lesson written into one of the darkest chapters of the last century. When starvation camps and besieged cities were liberated in the 1940s, rescuers did the most humane thing imaginable. They fed the survivors. And some of those survivors, people who had endured the unendurable and lived through it, died within days, killed by the food itself. Physicians later named the effect refeeding syndrome. Across a long fast, the body slowly drains the phosphate, potassium and magnesium hidden inside its cells, even while the levels measured in the blood still look almost normal. The moment a large meal arrives, insulin spikes and drives those minerals rushing back into the cells all at once. Blood phosphate can crash. The heart, which runs on a delicate electrical rhythm, can lose that rhythm and simply stop, often within about 4 days of the first meals. The fast did not kill them. The return did. That is the sober truth buried under every glossy fasting infographic. The body's survival program is elegant, ancient and real, but it is a program built for scarcity, and coming out of it safely is a medical event, not a snack. So circle back to the question we opened with, does your body eat itself when you fast? It does, in the most literal sense there is, and that self-eating is mostly maintenance, a deep clean that a constantly fed body rarely gets the chance to run. But the tidy timelines are largely marketing. The fear of melting away your muscle is overblown, and the real edge of the knife is the meal at the end. You are carrying a set of instructions roughly 4 million years old for going without food. Understanding what those instructions actually do instead of the myth pinned on top of them is the entire point. And there is one more thread worth pulling. The same low nutrient switch that triggers all this cellular cleanup has been linked, in animals, to how long they live, which opens a strange and still unsettled question about hunger and aging that we will follow next. Subscribe, and we will keep taking one hidden mechanism apart every single week.